You know, every year I sit down to do this Florida State preview, and I find myself saying the same things over and over again, right? Clown college, all-girls school, get White Tonto off that show pony, stop throwing a flaming toothpick into the 50-yard line. But I also say this, can Florida State be this bad again this year? They've been epically bad over the last 3 seasons. 3 straight losing seasons for Florida State. I didn't think I would see that in my lifetime. This is a proud program, a program that's been near the top or at the top of college football for a lot of the last 30 to 35 years. Winning a national title, of course, as recently as 2013, Jimbo Fisher, Jameis Winston days. That seems like 100 years ago at this point. Florida State won, I think, 3 games last year. Can they get it turned around in 2021? They bring in a ton of transfers to try to help immediately. Is it going to work? We're going to find out in today's video when I give you a preview and a game-by-game prediction for the Florida State Seminoles. Let's go. Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou. And guess what? I'm live for you on YouTube today, so thanks for watching. Really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. Some of them are even watchable. I don't know about this one. You'll have to let me know down in the comment section below at the end of this video whether you thought this one was watchable or not. Feel free to let me know which games you think I got wrong, too. Of course, I do an entire series of these videos every offseason. Started with Notre Dame on Friday. Here we are, second video in the series today, Florida State. I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single game on their schedule after we preview their team briefly right now. All right, I got my copious notes here. Don't worry, I do all the research so you don't have to. Florida State Seminoles, head coach Mike Norvelle, right? Second season. Really his first season. If this is your second season somewhere as a head coach, this is really your first season. You had no off-season last year because of the pandemic, no spring practices, no real off-season camps or summer workouts. Hard to implement new play, new philosophies, new offenses, new defenses. Hard to do that with next to no off-season at all. Got to give Mike Norvelle, I think, a little bit of benefit of the doubt for last year's terrible year. And it was terrible. 3-6, third straight losing season for Florida State. Can they get it turned around in 2021? Well, there's two ways to get, well, there's 3 ways, I guess, to get things turned around in college football. A dynamic coaching hire, right? Better recruiting classes or the transfer portal. Florida State's going for the hat trick here with all 3. They've got faith in Mike Norvelle to turn things around. They're trying to improve the recruiting, and they brought in a ton of, I think, immediate impact players in the transfer market. Let's look at recruiting first. I like to do this for every team we look at. I take a look at the last 4 years of recruiting. This gives us a general idea of the amount of talent available on a team. Now, you've always got kids that transfer out, kids that transfer in, kids that get hurt, kids that are no longer with the program for whatever reason. And on top of all that, recruiting is not an exact science. But still, this gives you a pretty good idea. If a team has recruited within the top 5 for 4 or 5 years in a row, you can rest assured they're going to have a pretty talented roster. If they've recruited in the 80s for 4 or 5 years in a row, you can rest assured they're not going to have a very talented roster. Let's take a look at Florida State. I used the numbers from 24/7 Sports. 2021, the most recent class, 29th in America. Not very good. That was good for 4th in the ACC. 2020, 25th recruiting class, again, 4th in the ACC. 2019, the 26th ranked recruiting class, that was 3rd in the ACC. And going back to 2018, 14th ranked recruiting class, again, 3rd in the SEC. So on average, they're recruiting in about the 25 range nationally and around 3 or 4 within the ACC. Let's start with Florida State's offense. What do they got coming back? What did they lose? What might this offense look like this year? First of all, some general thoughts. I think Florida State's offense could be okay this year. Now, a lot, of course, is going to depend on the quarterback position, just like it does with every single team. Things are so offense-oriented right now in college football. Without a good dynamic quarterback, it's hard to make a lot of noise. They bring in a transfer in Mackenzie Milton. Now, Mackenzie Milton was lighting it up at Central Florida, what seems like forever ago, before that gruesome injury that he had. That was all the way back in 2018. Is that right? Hard to believe it was that long ago. Didn't play in 19, didn't play at 20. So it's been a while since we've seen Mackenzie Milton play. Now, clearly, If he's the McKenzie Milton that we saw at Central Florida, this would be a huge upgrade at the quarterback position for Florida State and probably the best quarterback they have had since Jameis Winston. I'm not ready to compare Mackenzie Wilson to Jameis Winston, but if you look at the list of disasters that have played quarterback since Jameis Winston left, the McKenzie Milton of old would be the best they've had since Jameis Winston, and I don't think that can be argued. The problem for McKenzie Milton is a returning quarterback, Jordan Travis. Now, he didn't play great last year, especially through the air, but he can run around, he can move, and he looked good. He looked good doing it. He's got to get a lot better throwing the ball, a lot better at sort of managing and running the offense. He did look good in spring, as did McKenzie Milton. McKenzie Milton started off a little rough, a little rusty in Florida State's spring game. Looked a little bit better later on. But honestly, if you watched that game with a fair mind, Jordan Travis looked like the better quarterback. Now, like I mentioned, McKenzie Milton had not really played in almost 2 complete years. So maybe you say, well, yeah, it takes him a little bit to shake the rust off. We don't know what's going to happen as far as the quarterback competition goes over the rest of the offseason, summer camp, heading into fall practices. It wouldn't surprise me one bit to see McKenzie Milton get the start. It wouldn't surprise me one bit to see the other guy get the start. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see them both play. But anyway, that's something to keep an eye on. Running back position, Florida State actually wasn't terrible at running the ball last year. Now, a lot of that had to do with the running quarterback they had. But they have a couple of dynamic running backs, too. They have Joshua Corbin. He's sort of the every down back, your short yardage back, your pounded up the middle back. And then you've got this Lawrence, and here we are with these names again, but this Lawrence Toafili, I don't know, 9.6 yards a carry this guy averaged last year. So he's kind of a home run hitter. Florida State was 4th in the ACC overall in yards per carry last year. So again, some success running the ball. They've got to get better through the air. Offensive line, a mixed bag with the offensive line in my opinion. Now, it's no secret that I'm of the opinion Florida State has had one of, if not the worst offensive lines in all of college football over the last 3, 4, 5 years. That's the bad news. The good news is all those bad starters from last year return. So, maybe they'll be better this year. Normally you want as many starters returning from year to year as possible. And in Florida State's case, they get all 5 of their starting offensive linemen back. But again, these guys were not that good. Now, maybe they get better year 2 in this new system under Mike Norvell, plus another year of experience under their belt. I'm not saying Florida State's going to have the worst offensive line in America, but it's hard to imagine Florida State taking that big of a leap forward on the offensive line, considering they're probably going to be starting the same 5 guys that started last year. At wide receiver, you return several players from last year and a tight end in McDonald. You return Wilson and Helton at the wide receiver position and McDonald at tight end. That's the good news. The bad news is, and I keep getting back to this, the throwing game, the passing game for Florida State was just abysmal last year. You struggled all year long. None of those returning players averaged more than 13 yards per catch, which is sort of a number that people look at in college football. 13 yards per catch is not an exorbitant number. And the fact that you don't have anybody returning that had more than that is a little troubling. Now, you bring a transfer in from, wait for it, Kansas. That's right. You bring in a wide receiver from Kansas. We'll see if he can help you out. And you do have some freshmen that will probably get a look and potentially some playing time. McLean, Hill, Burrell. You've recruited pretty well at the wide receiver position. You've got some numbers there. Hopefully you can find somebody that can sort of be the go-to guy or a home run threat for you deep down the field, because that's really what you need. Switching over to the defense. Now, this is where I think you're going to see a huge improvement at Florida State from anything you've seen in the last several years. I don't know that I've seen a team go out and get this many impact players from the transfer portal in one offseason. I'm not trying to say that any of these players are All-Americans or Heisman candidates or first-round draft picks, although I do think one in particular has a chance. But you got several people out of the transfer portal that I think will not only play and play a lot, but probably start on your defense this year and could all be really, really good. Jermaine Johnson, a guy I know a lot about, he spent some time in Athens as a Georgia Bulldog before transferring out. He had a pretty good season last year, and I thought was set to have a really good season this year at UGA, but for whatever reason, he decided to transfer out. Our loss was Florida State's gain. You gain Jermaine Johnson. You also brought in 3 defensive backs, one from South Carolina, He'll probably start. You got another one from Arkansas, and you got one from Central Florida. All of these guys could play a lot, play right away, and potentially start. I think Jermaine Johnson clearly is the best of the bunch and definitely has the most potential. This is a guy that can get after the quarterback. He can play on all three downs. I think you have a really, really good player there in Jermaine Johnson. Like I said, they can start and improve your defense immediately. He's got a ton of playing experience. These are some impact players you brought in the transfer portal over there, which is good news because you were 105th last year in yards per play and scoring defense. Florida State gave up 36 points per game. You start looking into some of these stats for Florida State, and you think you're reading it wrong. You almost think it's some kind of an error or mistake. It's just I'm no Florida State fan, but Jesus, I grew up. I sort of became a college football fan in the 90s. I did watch some in the 80s, but I was a little too young to really get into it. But I really started watching football in the 90s. And Florida State was just the dominant team. I mean, those Florida State-Miami games were epic every single year. Bobby Bowden was there. I mean, Charlie Ward. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. They won 10 games in a row or finished in the top 10 or 5, something like 15 years in a row. It was just unbelievable. And you start looking at some of these numbers for Florida State over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's just hard to believe that they've gotten this bad in really such a relatively short period of time. Can they get it turned around in 2021? We're about to find out right now. Let's put the schedule up on the screen. We're going to go through it game by game. Now, I'm going to give you a winner and a loser for every single game. I don't just give you a record. Anybody can say, well, Florida State's going 6-6. Okay, great. Which 6 teams are they losing to, though? That's the hard part to figure out. You start off at home against Notre Dame. Notre Dame lost a lot on offense. I did a Notre Dame preview the other day, so if you've seen it, you already know which way I'm going here. I would not be shocked if for some reason Florida State found a way to pull this game out. I've got Notre Dame winning, so Florida State taking a loss in week 1 at home to Notre Dame. But if Mackenzie Milton can get back anywhere close to what he was at Central Florida, and if those guys that you brought in on the transfer portal on the defensive side of the ball can be ready to go week 1, I can see a scenario where Florida State could surprise Notre Dame in week 1. I really could. Notre Dame lost 9 starters on offense, including quarterback Ian Book, lost their best player on defense. Now, they've got a lot of talent. They recruit well. But still, this is going to be the first start for whoever it is that takes the field for Notre Dame at the quarterback position. There is a possibility Florida State pulls up a huge upset here. Now, Florida State was on the other end of an upset last season. They were a 13-point favorite week 1 last year over Georgia Tech and lost. You'll be about that much of an underdog this year at home, I think, to Notre Dame, probably about a 2-touchdown underdog. Can Florida State pull that upset off this year? It's possible. This is not a knock on Florida State. I do have you losing, but it could be an interesting game to keep an eye on. Now, I think you're going to get a streak of W's here after that opening loss. You play Jacksonville State week 2. That should be a relatively easy win. That puts you at 1-1. On the road at Wake Forest, I just have zero faith in Wake Forest. I think even though it's on the road, I think you'll go up there and get it done. Louisville, one of the most disappointing teams in the ACC to me last year. I thought they had some weapons on offense and the potential to win some games, and they just, outside of 1 or 2 games, they just looked terrible and disjointed. I've got you winning that one. Syracuse, another team that I was high on in the ACC a couple of years ago. I was, what's the guy's name? Beavers or Babbo Beebens. What is his name? Bilbo Baggins. What is his name? Dino Babers. Bilbo. Did I say Bilbo Baggins? Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I've got you beating the fruit at home. So through your first 5 games, I've got you at 4-1. Now it's a beneficial schedule. Your schedule is backloaded. Most of your difficult games are in the back half of your schedule. You only play 1 road game in that first 5 weeks, so you've got some things working in your favor early in the season. I've got Notre Dame or Florida State sitting at 4-1 after week 5. But this is just where it starts to get real hard to find more Florida State wins on the rest of this schedule. You go on the road and play North Carolina. I know you beat them last year. One of, if not the biggest upsets in all of college football. They've got to have this game circled this year. Sam Howell's back. The guy's a Heisman contender. They got to replace some running backs, but there's weapons everywhere. Their defense should be even better than last year. I just don't see you getting a win on the road here week 6 at North Carolina. I've got you catching your second loss. Then you get a bye week. Come out of your bye week and play UMass. This is piss poor scheduling here. Why you need a bye week before UMass is anybody's guess. You should have had this up before the UNC game, honestly. But let's face it, you guys aren't the brightest bulbs. Let's just call it what it is. Week 9 on the road at Clemson. I'm sorry, loss. Do I think Florida State has the potential to surprise some people this year and be better than what people think? Yes, if Mackenzie Milton is able to play at a high level and if that defense gets a lot better, yes. Do I think you have the potential to get to a level you would need to be to compete or beat Clemson on the road? Not only no, but hell no. Not happening. You'll take a loss there. Now, these next 2 games are very interesting to me. Both are home games. Your last 2 home games of the season, NC State at home, Miami at home. I think both of these teams are going to be good. I think both of these teams are better than Florida State. I think you could easily lose both of these games. But I think you win one of them. And I'm tempted to let the Florida State man decide which one it is he wants to win. I know you guys would love to beat Miami. I've got you somehow pulling out a miracle win against NC State, but then losing again to Miami. They've beat you 4 times in a row. Make it 5. You beat NC State in a close one, an upset, because NC State is better than Florida State. And they've got a lot coming back. And like I said, don't even get mad at me about having you lose to Miami. I could have you losing both of those games. NC State much better than Florida State. I think this is your surprise win you get this year. You beat NC State at home after getting mollywopped by Clemson. But that game is sandwiched in between the Clemson and Miami games, and you lose both of those. You take the L to Miami. I'm sorry. On the road at Boston College, another team that I think in the ACC is better than Florida State right now. I know these things are weird to say, that NC State might be better than Florida State or that Boston College might be better than Florida State. I just think they are. I think you lose on the road at Boston College, and I think you lose on the road at Florida to close out the regular season. Florida's beat you a couple of years in a row. Florida leads the series 36-26. You're trailing in the all-time series to Florida and Miami. Not good, Florida State. You need to tighten that up. That puts you at 6-6. I honestly don't see anything better than that. I try to do like, well, maybe if things go right, you get another win or 2. I think some things have to go right for you to get to 6 wins, and that's where I have you is at 6-6. You could easily be 5-7, and the possibility for 4-8 is real, very real, especially if you don't get that quarterback situation figured out in terms of what might be going on with Mackenzie Milton or whatever. But there you go. That's the best I can do for Florida State. Not what Florida State fans want to hear, not the Florida State seasons we're used to seeing over the last 30 or 35 years. But I've got the Seminole going 6-6. It looks like I might have been right. The curse of White Tonto lives on forever. Until you guys get that white frat kid off of that show pony and put a real engine up on that horse, it's hard for me to see a scenario where you really turn things around. Anyway, appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.
White Tonto say, Notre Dame have not won major bowl game since 1991. White Tonto also say, this not major bowl game. White Tonto say, Rudy was a long time ago and not very good. He played one play out of pity and he was offsides and later became a felon. Rudy Rudiger is poor man Stetson Bennett. White Tonto still take Notre Dame, win by 5 touchdowns.